Studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
You are listening to the Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZWLP Conroe and 106.1 KZCCLP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to the Cindy Cochran Show, and I'm so glad you are. If you're on 106.1 or 104.5, you've got a span of the Montgomery County to be able to listen to us, and then you're on to the Spanish channel. So have fun listening to that. And then as soon as you get to a place that you've got a computer or on your phone, you can go to YouTube and watch us live. Yes, live. And today I've got the most interesting person. His name is, no, not Nelson, not your last name, Nelson. Jason Nelson. And he's running for position 2 for the Woodlands Township. And he's always running all around because he has 6 kids, 6 children. It's a blended family. So he didn't have all 6 at one time, but you've got 6 children that is just amazing. And I want to welcome you. I'm so excited about having you here.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
And we did talk to his wife, Tiffany Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
She's running for position 1. I don't know what that means if she's running for a bigger position than you are, but position 1 for the CISD school board. And so you got a lot of politics going on in your household.
Right.
So at dinner time, do y'all sit down for dinner?
We try to, but that doesn't always happen.
No,
Kids have activities almost every evening: football, volleyball, FFA.
With 6 kids, do you have an Uber account or anything?
We don't, but we have 3 kids that are driving.
Oh,
I mean, they've been
perfect.
driving us crazy for years, but they're actually physically driving. And so that
awesome.
helps. That helps a lot. So
That's
even
great.
last night, one of the kids was hungry, and we were en route from someplace else, and we were like, "Well, do you want us to stop by and get you food?" And he was like, "Mom, I can drive. I can go get my own food." We look at each other like, "Oh yeah, that's right. Go for it."
I love that. How old is he?
He's 16.
Okay. Wow. At 16, he can. Did he start at 15 getting his?
Oh, they all were
learners?
very serious about getting their permit and practicing, and they're all really good drivers. The ones who are driving, they're really good, and they practiced a lot, and it's actually, I think, increased their level of responsibility.
Oh,
It's a serious thing
it
for
is.
high school kids to start driving. That's a
man.
big responsibility.
Yeah, because all the other high school kids in the parking lot are kind of crazy. So it's always yours that do fine, and they have to watch out for everybody else. My husband tells my grandchildren, "You have to drive like everybody's out to get you." And I said, "Well, that's a kind of a weird way to drive. I mean, how happy can you be doing that?" And he goes, "I'm telling you, it's a crazy world out there, so you've got to drive like everybody." And he said, "Just drive like your grandma's driving in the other lanes," because they always get after me about the way I drive. And they're always saying, "Grandma, no, you're going too fast. Grandma, come on, Grandma, come on. You hit that curb twice." And I said, and I was always so anxious for y'all to talk, to be able to talk. And here you are, and it's using against me. But I think that when Samuel, he's getting ready to be 18 in a few days, and he said to me, "Now, you know the deal. I'm going to be 18. I'm going to be an adult. I'm an adult at 18. So that means I don't have to ask y'all for when I want to go do something." I went, "Say what?
Where you living?"
Yeah, that's right. Where are you living, and what insurance are you going to get?
Right.
And, and so I think
When's his
got it
birthday?
over to 6.
Okay, my oldest is turning 18 on the 4th,
Really?
October 4th.
Okay, is it she or he?
She.
Oh, well, maybe we can get them together. he's going to the homecoming dance. This is going to be, it's interesting when they get to that age and they start feeling like, okay, now I'm at the age where I can tell
grown.
you I'm grown.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Instead of saying, don't keep treating me like a little kid. And I said, when you act like it, that's how you're going to be treated. You got to grow up. But they're good kids. And he's taken after his mom as a singer. And so he's performed and he's done, and so they want him to start doing the songs at church,
good.
you know, and,
Yeah,
and
good.
that kind of thing. And that would be excellent.
That's great.
And so if they only knew the other music he listened to, I don't know, but it's going to be a transition.
I think that's so important. I think just as a public speaker, I look back in my high school years and I started singing in the church because I was raised in the church. I mean,
Right.
my dad's a pastor. My grandfather directed the choir. My mom played the piano. My grandmother played the organ. So church was a
very
big
vested.
part of our lives. We had to go to church 3 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. The only
night.
time you missed going to church is if you were sick. But if you were sick, that meant that you threw up. And if you threw up, that meant you felt better. So you went to church. This is pre-COVID days. So you had to be there. And we had to sing. But most of my stage fright was overcome because I learned to be in front of people singing at a very early age. So,
Right. No,
so I
that's
think that
good.
a way to overcome that is because 90% of public speaking, I think, is just overcoming that kind of fear of being in front of people.
Well, I think you're right, and I think that he doesn't understand that right yet. But when he sings, it's just like people that have a stutter, and as soon as they start singing, they don't have that anymore, and they don't even understand that. Wait, if you can sing, maybe there's a way we can get rid of the stutter when you talk. But I think that it's helped him tremendously because all the kids come up and say, "Hey, man, that was really great. I can't believe you sound just like John Legend. That's amazing."
cool.
And they do that kind of stuff, and so it makes him feel like, I am somebody. And I think that really helps. His sister is the antithesis of him. She's very shy, but she's extremely talented, but she's real shy, and she's not really excited about, having all the attention on her. I don't know where that came from, not hereditary, but but she says, "Grandma, do you have to talk about us when on the radio?" And I went, "Well, you're so interesting. Y'all
There
both
you
have
go.
different personalities." But I think that that's great. And for you to have that many kids and that many different personalities and that many different egos, bless you, my son, because that is amazing. But they're all going to church and you get them up. And what time do y'all start getting up for church?
Well, that's a good question. Now that they're driving, I pretty much let them bring themselves because growing up as pastor's kids, like I said, you go to church
Yes.
a lot. So
Yes, you do.
So the kids have been at a lot of church functions. So I'm okay with them sleeping in on Sunday morning and maybe going to youth group that Sunday night or
Yes.
joining it with friends at another youth group. And that's great too. Just as long as they understand that Jesus is who he says he is and he's the most important person in their life. I'm
That's
good
right.
with that. And they're all Jesus loving kids.
Right. That's perfect. And I grew up in the Church of Christ, and
Oh,
we
yeah.
went Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. And my friends would go like, "Y'all go to church all the time." And I went, "That's how it is. You just do. And you don't get to go to the Beatles concert or the Dave Clark 5. You just don't. You can't because they all play on Wednesday night, and all the best shows came on Wednesday night, and you miss them. And I only saw The Wizard of Oz up to a certain point, and before it went to color, and I never knew what happened after she opened the door because we were going to church. But I love it. I love that I had that experience, and I think that makes you who you are, really. And and now it's so changed that you go one time on Sunday, and Wednesday night we go on Wednesday night. But it's just one time, and it's just weird that you don't have Sunday night to fall back on. Well, I'll go tonight.
Right.
Nope. You got to go today. But I think that your experience in all of that, and we've been talking how much you love education, and getting children of all different levels of different, and getting them educated. You have two in the Conroe.
We have 5 kids in the Conroe
kids
school
in the Conroe
district
school
and
district.
one at a private Christian school in Tomball.
And then you have how many in Woodlands?
So we have 2 at McCullough.
2 at McCullough, okay.
And 1 at the 9th grade campus and 2 at the Woodlands High School.
Yeah, 2 of my children grew up in McCullough. It was when it was the 70s. I mean, the epitome of the 70s is what McCullough High School looked like. And I loved it. I loved how, George Mitchell and all those guys just did a great, great job. And being in the Woodlands, since you're in the Woodlands,
Yes.
and the Woodlands it's sometimes difficult to explain to people how they, came about and how the township, takes over. When I was there, I interviewed George Mitchell, and he was amazing. What a visionary!
Right.
And when someone told him, he realized that building a church would be the best way to build a church, and give the churches land, and make them build churches, and people will come. And that's how you'll build that community, and you're building it from a good community, a good, people that want to go to church, he thought was good. And so, and he was right. He did it correctly. And his wife, he gave his wife the opportunity to name the Woodlands. It wasn't called the Woodlands then. He didn't know what to call it. And she said, okay, let me think about it. And then she came back and she said, I know what I want to call it. And he goes, what is it? And she goes, Strawberry Fields. And he goes, what? What's Strawberry Fields? What does that have to do with this place? And she said, like the song Strawberry Fields Forever. And he goes, okay, no, I'll name it. And then he called it the Woodlands, and she agreed with him. She said, yes, that's a good idea, because it all is woods.
There are a lot of woods.
A lot of
You need
woods.
to use your GPS whenever you're in the Woodlands, whether you've been there a year or 20 years.
It doesn't matter. You're right.
Looking for that gas station behind the trees can be a challenge.
Well, Fuddruckers is where Mitchell
Okay.
loved to go eat, and so we'd see him over there a lot, because I lived on Millbin, and
Yeah.
that was it. It was just like you went there and you went to Grandy's, and then it was, and I think. There was a Mexican food restaurant right there,
Okay.
on the corner, and that was it. And
And now
now
look
you
at it
look
now.
at it. Oh yeah.
Well, now it's ranked. It's been ranked the number one place to live in the U.S. for 2 years in a row now.
2
2 years
Really?
back to back.
Did they ever go to Willis and ask them what it was like?
It was niche.com. I don't
Okay,
know. I don't.
okay.
There are a lot of things that go into that, I'm sure. But
No, I never-
It's fun to represent the number one community in the country.
Well, I don't want to tell people that what Willis is like, because they may come want to live there, and I'd rather keep it to us. But I think the Woodlands was so interesting, and so can you explain like the history of the township and what the township actually represents and the power you have?
Right. So you're right about Mitchell's vision was amazing, and he came up here north of Houston. Little did we know that Houston would be kind of moving towards the Woodlands. And,
Right.
And Houston has a lot of control and authority over the Woodlands as an extra territorial jurisdiction. So we pay, in parts, part of our sales tax goes to the city of Houston. It's about $1 million a year. But for the most part, since 2007, since the township kind of became a government, and it's a very unique form of government. It's special enabling legislation that made it possible for us to be who we are. So we have a board of directors, and we're all at large. So I'm running for re-election in position 2. Position 2, just like the other 6 positions, represents the Woodlands as a whole. So same as case with Conroe ISD School District. They're all at-large members. They don't represent a specific geographic area of that entity. They represent it as a whole. So we are basically authorized, I tell people, we're authorized to have authority over parks, pools, pathways, and then we get to oversee our amazing fire department, which, by the way, is also number 1. They have an ISO rating of number 1,
yes.
and they are just amazing. Just a
They
little
are.
side, I had an opportunity to play on their softball team as we celebrated National Night Out, and we played against the sheriff officers, and so I got to play with them. I still am recovering. It was a week ago, and I think I pulled 3 or 4 muscles just running around the bases, but we got to win. And so they are just a great group of firefighters, and so we oversee that. Anytime we as a township have to look outside of those areas, we have to work in partnership with the other government entities, whether it be the county commissioners or whether it be the constable's office or the sheriff's office. So we do our best to just represent the residents of the Woodlands and protect what we believe that we should have as a township. And then from that point, we work contractually with the other officers or other county commissioners to provide what we can to be the best. And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes just dealing with issues of water, or the other issue that we just are happy to have resolved was TxDOT. They came in and basically they told us, we're widening 242. We're going to widen the whole thing. We're going to decrease the green space that you have in the median, and we're going to put extra lanes, and we're all thinking we don't want that. They're talking about putting up a sound barrier wall, and that just doesn't have the look and feel of the Woodlands.
No.
So Dr. Shelley, who's on our board, she kind of championed this, but the rest of the board spoke out loudly, and the residents spoke out loudly, and TxDOT, even though they don't respond to us normally, they don't, but they listen. They listen.
They
and
listen.
as of
You
now,
backed them down?
as of now, they said we're not widening 242 west of Gosling to 1488, and so really we believe the focus should be on 1488. And where 1488 meets 45, where 242 meets 45. So there's some instances like that where we really just have to use whatever influence we have, and we represent a pretty strong voice called the Woodlands with an amazing group of people, but also a very high tax base. And so
Yes.
sometimes that tax base can speak very loudly.
Yes. Oh, right.
But out of the Woodlands comes so many beautiful things. I just was at this Lions Club meeting in the Woodlands, and my wife Tiffany is the executive director of a nonprofit, and she presented so beautifully there as well. But I was reminded when she was presenting, along with 3 other nonprofit representatives, how many area nonprofits we have that are doing good, and a lot of them are based in Montgomery County, but a lot of them are based in the Woodlands too. So the Woodlands it's a great government structure. It's got great people. It's also got great opportunities to look out in service to others. And as the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required.
Right.
And so I think that we're good at looking at what God has given us as a township, particularly in that beautiful piece of creation that we call the Woodlands, which I love, by the way. A lot of it reminds me of where I grew up in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin particularly, beautiful pine trees. It kind of looks like that down here. So we have a lot of responsibility. And as a township director, I take it very seriously to do whatever we can to protect the geographic nature of the Woodlands, to protect the safety of the residents, to protect the quality of life we have, and also to see it as a platform where people can thrive, not so they can just benefit individually and so that the price of their house goes up and they can hold on to their investments, which is good, but also to see what we can do to do good for others around us who are in need, and not just in the immediate area, but who knows, to the ends of the earth.
Oh, that's great. Well, I mean, I know you really have the heart for that. And I think the Cynthia Woods Pavilion has been so amazing. I remember when they started building that.
Yeah, it's fun.
And we were all looking to see, like, what? They're going to have this big mound of grass, and you're going to sit on the grass? Who wants to sit on the grass? We all kept asking, like, questioning it. And when they got finished with it, it was beautiful.
It is.
And it was perfect for about maybe a week out of the, no, it was like because it's too hot a lot of times.
It's
but
fun.
when it's cool, that is the place to be. But a lot of times the musicians and the kids don't care. They don't care if it's hot or anything. They just, the fact that they can be there and they can get cheaper seats sitting on the lawn and the kids can run around and stuff.
And it's safe.
And it's safe.
And we
it
have
is.
our law enforcement is so good in our county.
Oh,
our constables, our
man.
sheriff officers. So if you ever go to those events, I mean, it's totally safe. I feel 100% secure in letting my children go to concerts there.
Oh, right.
And know that they're going to be in a very safe environment.
And walking from the Cinemark, that huge crowd that comes, it's like, okay, we're all going to go to the concert. And it's just amazing how many people, they just respond so well to anything like that. And when they have any of the activities like for Easter or all that, they use it for everything.
Right.
Everybody can use it. And if a church wants to use it for something like that, is it real costly for them to rent it?
I don't remember what the price is. The township doesn't own the pavilion, so that's a separate entity.
Okay.
There are parts of the facility where we've been involved, and so the skate rink is something that we're involved in. And
Oh, you are?
So
Okay.
in the winter months, the township provides ice skating, and in the summer months, the the pavilion takes over, but the pavilion is pretty much a separate entity. Now, some of the, a lot of the revenue that the township gets most of it comes from sales tax and hotel tax.
Right.
And then some of the taxes that they collect at special events comes towards the Woodlands too. So business for them when it's good is business good for the township. So our tax base is made up, our operating budget is made up 60% hotel tax, sales tax. And then we have property tax, which makes up a steady, consistent base of that, which you have to have because you never know what's going to happen to the economy. Like in COVID, our sales tax numbers went down. The hotel tax was basically dropping to zero because no one could go to the hotel.
Right.
You couldn't do it. They had to shut down. So we had to have that consistent property tax base to maintain our level of services. But I'm just so grateful that we have a great ability to collect these sales taxes. And because we have a good sales tax, hotel tax base, we're able to keep our property taxes low. Matter of fact, we just voted a couple weeks ago to lower the tax rate to an historic low for the Woodlands.
Really?
It's 18.5 cents per $100 valuation. So people who own a $500,000 home, 10 years ago, obviously it wasn't that price. It's appraised, so their investment, but they're paying actually the same or less taxes on that same home 10 years later than they were then. And it's because we start from a budgeting process. We start every year that I've been there, and it's only been, this is my third year budgeting. We start with a no new revenue tax rate. We basically say, how can we keep the property tax rates, and how can we keep as much money in the residents' pockets as possible, and then working our budget from there. Now, unfortunately, not all of our government entities do that, and so it gets a little confusing when they say they lowered our tax rate, but that's not necessarily true, because if the appraisals went up and they lowered the rate, chances are the average taxpayer is still going to pay more because they didn't lower it to or below the no new revenue rate. So that's just a little snapshot of what happens from a tax standpoint. But I think that because the Woodlands has a great access to those sales tax, hotel tax, because we have a consistent property tax base, we're able to offer the number one amenities and services in the country.
That's amazing. I can see why you were elected first time and see why
thank you.
it looks like you might be elected again, because what you're talking about really is.
Well, I just have a passion to protecting this. I mean, this is a very special community.
Yes,
and
it is.
and I want to do the best to keep it safe for my children and for generations to come. And it also, like you said earlier, it's a place where people can thrive and work. People are coming to work in the Woodlands just as much or more as they're leaving the Woodlands to work now, because we got so many great companies
Yes.
and service industries, hotels and restaurants and businesses are there. So we want it to be a fantastic place to work. We want to be a fantastic place to visit. We have Visit the Woodlands that does a great job in marketing across the country and the world.
Right.
Talking about the great places that we have here to visit. It's got to be a great place to play, to enjoy. That's why the parks are so important for us. And we talked about adding some cool features to some of our parks. And then a great place, like you said, to worship. And I love driving around the Woodlands, seeing the partnership, at least in concept, between the churches and public buildings like school buildings. If you notice, there are schools across from churches all over the county, but particularly all over the Woodlands, and they share parking. On Sunday mornings, parishioners or members will park in the school lot if they need it, and then sometimes school programs need to use the churches or their parking, and it's just here we are.
Now that was brilliant.
I
on
thought so,
Mitchell's.
too.
That's what he wanted. He wanted the parking lots to be shared.
Yeah.
And it was excellent. The only thing he did wrong, he found it was a mistake, was he had. I don't know if you've seen where they used to come. It was a community, and he built this building, and he wanted all the churches to come in and worship there. And at first, that's how he saw it. Like, the churches can come in this building that I'll build, that they don't have to worry about me building, but they can come in and worship together. It'll be great to bring them together. Well, he had to learn a lesson about, all agree on everything.
Well,
you
you just have to look at church history to know that that's probably not going to happen.
But it was such a sweet idea.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm sure it made Jesus
there are
smile.
hundreds of denominations just because some people
Yes.
can't figure out to be on the same page of whether or not we have piano music or organ music or guitar or do we stand or sit.
Right.
So
Oh, but I understand that. But I think that it was a great idea, and I think God blessed that whole area, because he really did raise the awareness and got people there going to church. That
Yeah,
was great.
I love how you said the word blessing, because I do think that the Woodlands has been blessed. And I just spoke about this a couple weeks ago. We're doing a sermon series on wisdom, basically, and how individuals and groups, we all are in need of more wisdom. But there's two Hebrew words for the word blessing. One is just something that you've been given that you didn't do anything to earn. And God blesses each and every person on a daily basis. Even if you just look at the gift of life, that's a blessing. The gift of
Right.
waking up, the gift of breathing, the gift of having clean water, that's all a blessing. But then in the Hebrew understanding of the word blessing, there are other blessings that come your way because you make good choices, and they're natural byproducts or consequences to those choices. And I think if you look at the Woodlands leadership, particularly current board members and previous boards, that good choices, financial choices have been made from the beginning that have resulted in blessings / byproducts of those choices.
That's a great way to look at it. I think I wonder though, are you having because there was rumors the whole time I was living there that Houston was going to incorporate, and we were like, should we start putting sandbags out? What should we do to protect ourselves from having Houston come in and take
Well, there was a
over?
contract set up when they did the whole ETJ, the extraterritorial jurisdiction, that in 2057 that the Woodlands would be incorporated into Houston. Houston would be, I'm sorry, not incorporated. Houston would annex the Woodlands.
Annex
the Woodlands, yeah.
not incorporate.
That's what they did with Kingwood. So
Right.
incorporation is just simply the idea of becoming a city. And so this was on the ballot last year, and the Woodlands residents had an opportunity to vote, and they voted overwhelmingly not to incorporate. Now, some people say because of the current legislation, and this is new information that not everybody has, and I heard somebody say this, and it wasn't exactly correct. Somebody said because of the new legislation that exists, and it does exist, that even in a situation like ours in 2057, when it rolls around, that the state requires that no township like our case could be incorporated without voter approval. That's in the legislation.
Wow.
But
wow.
there has been cases in Texas where the courts have gotten involved, and they ruled that if there's a contract that happened before that legislation was written, then the contract is going to be the one that's going to be recognized. And in two cases, just in the last couple of years, there were situations like ours where they did not get the chance, even though it's on the books, to vote. Even though the current legislation says that you can't be annexed unless you vote. But if there's a previous contract, I don't care if it's 50 years old or 100 years old, that's going to be honored. So it's not quite totally true to say that we'll never be annexed unless we decide that we want to do that. Because A, legislation can change based on who's in office.
Right,
And
right.
B, there's this case law that exists where contracts can supersede or be the ones that take precedence over the legislation. Now, we've never broached that subject because we still got a lot of time to figure this out. And in my mind, incorporation has been overwhelmingly put to bed for some time.
Yes.
And so, as a board member and trying to be reelected, and I believe that I believe we've done a good job. We're doing our best to listen to the residents, and the number one way to listen, I think, to your residents is to hear their voice through a vote. And so there's some people who say, well, we shouldn't have put up on the ballot last year because it was a non-election year, not a big election year, or we should have waited or not do it at all. I think anytime we have an opportunity to vote for something in a country where there's free and fair elections, that is
Right.
a privilege, not enjoyed
Yes.
by the majority of this world.
Yes.
And
that's
so I clearly heard them say, we do not want to incorporate, whether it's at this time or ever, we do not want to incorporate. And we just got back to work, and we started doing whatever we had to do as a board to offer the best services and amenities, keep this community as safe and protected as possible, and we're number one again. And so I think that the current policies, the conservative mindset and how we handle our finances and how we prioritize security and safety and quality of life, I think that has gone a long way. And we just received positive feedback. And I might be bragging on the township board a little bit too much, but it's fun to serve along the other leaders who've been working, even longer years than I have. But we received the results from a residential survey, and it was 96% approval rating for what the township is doing. And so it's hard to go in election season and be told, you're not doing good enough, and to be criticized, because we're not in this for the money. We don't get paid. We're elected officials, but in this case, we don't get paid. And neither do the school board members. We're doing this because we want to protect what we have or improve what we have, or because we feel, and most importantly, feel called by God to serve, to do good. And so I think that the current policies of the board are something that shows us we're the best. It's hard to argue that we need better when it's hard to be better than
Number one.
the best
Yeah.
right now.
Right.
And so I understand that there are some people upset with me personally, others because we even put it on the ballot. But again, I've been in places around the world where people would love the opportunity to have their
be
voice
able to-
heard through a
yeah.
vote. And so I heard the residents, and I plan on if they want me again, great. If they don't, I respect that because I respect the vote.
Well, I think that it's so important right now, and to stay as far away from Houston as possible. But that's, I grew up in Houston, and so it killed me to have to move further north because of how bad things had gotten. And this was way back in the 70s. So I feel like, wow, this is. And we got to the Woodlands, and then I started hearing these rumors that Houston was encroaching upon the Woodlands.
Well, we have our eye on Houston. We have our eye on Harris County.
Yes.
And I think that people need to get out and vote in Harris County and change leadership for the county judge, because
Amen,
if
brother.
you have a county judge who's not supporting law enforcement, you've got a major problem. And Houston is.
Are you talking about Hidalgo?
Yes, and Houston.
Oh, my word.
So Houston is number 1 or 2 in crime right now because their policies are taking away the authority of our law enforcement, and they're letting criminals back on the street, or not giving them the proper amount of bail set, so they're lowering the bail. It's just crazy. And I know our law enforcement because in the Woodlands, we don't have a law enforcement that reports to us. We contract them out, and we have a great relationship with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, and we have a great relationship with Harris County Constable, and so
Yes.
we contract those officers out. And I've met with those officers, and I have so much respect for them. And one of the reasons why the Woodlands is number 1 is because of the firefighters keeping us safe and protecting us, but also because of our law enforcement officers. And we have 13 that represent us specifically in Creekside, in the Woodlands, because that's part of Harris County. And then we have 92 officers that represent us in Montgomery County side of the Woodlands through the Sheriff's Office. And
Well-
Rand does a fantastic job
Oh,
with his
yeah.
guy, Captain Holyfield. I consider him to be a friend of mine and a brother in Christ. And he and I have great relationship, good communication. And so I'm just so proud of them. And I believe that we have to continue to work even harder to make sure we keep it safe because of our neighbors in the South. Just kind of
That is
letting the
that's
letting
huge.
the hens out.
If you have, it's funny. I would work on the Officer of the Year campaign every year with Silver Rock, and going and interviewing these officers and riding with them and all that stuff. It was wonderful. And the officers here in Conroe, and is in the same thing. And I've had 2 or 3 instances where they'd stop me. And I go, don't you remember me? I did the Officer of the Year, and it was, and I interviewed you, and they went, oh yeah, thanks a lot. Can you give me your autograph right here? And I had to sign that ticket. But I think it was great. I did a spoof on Shenandoah because of how strict their officers were, and you don't have long to ride in Shenandoah,
Right.
but you better be at the right speed.
You better be.
And so it showed how strict they were, and the officer comes over and says, you were doing 43 and a 40, no, you were doing 45 and a 43 mile an hour. It was like a 30 mile an hour, and I was doing 40, and I was like, are you going to give me a ticket for that? And he goes, yes, ma'am, follow the law here. And you follow the law, you have to drive exactly what we say. And when you get to that point over there that starts Shenandoah, you better be driving exactly there. And it was great. And that's how they are. They're just very strict, and everybody knows about it. And everybody knows how strict they are, and they're not kidding at all. And then, but here we have the Catfish Festival coming
Yeah.
up soon.
Yeah.
Have you been to that?
I have not. I've heard about it.
Oh, you need to come to that. And it's crowded. Everybody loves this place. And I was working at the studio down by Maine, and I took my grandchildren out, and I lost them twice.
Ooh.
And I could not find. I didn't know where they had gone.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to find them. And I asked an officer, I can't find my grandchildren. They said, she gets on. They shut down every exit to getting out of that place. Shut it down till they were found. That was the most embarrassing, but the best rewarding thing I've ever seen, because they weren't kidding. You know, if you lose somebody or something, somebody's gone or anything like that, they are on it so fast. So I just love it. Every time we have radio show, at the end of the show, I tell them, the first responders, we just love you so much. And what's great is that God loves you more. And I respect them so much. And then the firemen and all that have so many hours they have to wait for something to happen, but they're always on the ready, and they're training all the time, and they just did the thing where they took people to let them see what it was like for the 911 officers and what they had to do. So I respect that, and that makes a huge difference in where you want to live.
Right.
And so if you feel safe in some place, then it's everything.
Right.
And if you guys work that hard to keep it safe and to make sure these officers, and if there's any problem, and that you're not at all the ilk that would say we're going to defund the police and remodel it, and we're going to send out some citizens to tell everybody what they should do.
I come from a family of public servants. I have an uncle who's retired assistant police chief, and his brother actually was the same thing. And I have a brother who's a firefighter in Wisconsin, and he was actually called in to help with the riots last summer in Kenosha. And it's a sad thing that we've gotten to the point, even the Woodlands, where we have to provide now our firefighters protection, not just against natural evils, but against societal evils as well. But that's where we are now as a country. We're actually having to shield our firefighters from potentially being harmed by violence. And so my brother sent me a picture, and I gasped. My heart just leaped in my chest, because he looked like he was in SWAT gear as he was going into. I'm like, I said, I was thinking to myself, wait, he signed up to be a firefighter. Law enforcement are trained to do that, and they live by, just like the firefighters, a high code of conduct and code of honor. But I didn't expect to see that picture of him going into that sort of harm's way. I was accustomed to see him going into, go fight a fire, but being called in to put down riots was something I wasn't ready for. But that's where we are, where our public servants who aren't in it for the money, they're in it because they feel called by God to serve and protect. Our firefighters feel that in a different way. Our law enforcement do that. Those who are in the medical industry, our nurses, our doctors do that. So
sure, that's right.
As a society, I think we've lost respect for people who are willing to serve. And I don't know even if some of our society understands what it means to even serve altruistically. Like, everybody now seems to expect that people are doing something to get something out of it. When that's not the case. There are many, many people who are still serving because they are called by God to serve, and because they naturally enjoy helping others with or without getting the credit.
Right. Because, when somebody is disabled on the street and you see them out there and they pulled up the hood or something, or there's been a wreck, people stop saying, can I call somebody? Can I help you? Can I do this? Do you want me to take the children? I'll watch the children. They're so good, and people from up north will come here and go, they're so friendly. In fact, it took a while to understand what their friendliness was all about, because they were just too friendly, and they were always asking you, are you okay? Hey, how are you doing? Where are you from? What's it going?
Right.
They ask so many questions there. Yeah. It's just because we are friendly, basically friendly.
And I know we've talked about the Woodlands quite a bit here, because I live in the Woodlands, and I'm one of the township directors, but I also have a foot in Tomball because I pastor in Tomball now. And I have a special place in my heart for tomball. And talking about respect and honor, I officiate as a pastor many funerals and many memorial services. And really the distinction between the two is whether the body is in the room. A funeral, you have the body in the casket in the room or ashes, and then the memorial service, you're just celebrating the life apart from the casket, from the body. But I remember my first time officiating a funeral in Tomball, and we were doing a processional to the gravesite, and I was amazed at the number of cars when we got downtown Tomball that pulled over to the side of the road and waited for the funeral procession to go by. I'll go do officiate in Houston, and it's almost impossible for the officers to get people to stop. Not even out of respect, just for safety, so to let cars go by. Right. But I have a lot of respect for the people in Tomball as well as the people in the Woodlands.
No, that is so true, and I've seen that when they put all the flags up along the overpasses and things like that, and it's just I think there is a lot of respect for that, and I know Samuel, we were talking about, grandson, when he see anybody that was in the Army outfit or anything that he saw that was a uniform, he'd go over and talk to him and tell him, thank you for, for serving. He's just a little kid, but he knew that meant you respect that. And you don't talk back to an officer. An officer's there to help you. It's a good thing they did stop you because you were speeding. You could have had a wreck and died. But they stopped you, so you need to thank them for stopping you. And he goes, you want me to thank the policeman for stopping me? I said, yeah, because you may not have made it home. And he goes, oh, okay. And I thought about that. So it's just amazing to watch kids that do not have any they call everybody a cop, and they call everybody, my mother never allowed us to say cop. You had to say officer. And it was just totally out of respect.
Right.
And my grandson said, but they got a whole TV show called Cops. What do you do with that?
Right.
I'm just telling you, it's just respect. It's just you've got to respect.
We need
them.
more of it.
I can't believe it. Now tell people how they can, if you need them to go to your website and stuff. How do you want them to get there to you?
From the township perspective, my website is connected to my Facebook page. So it's Jason J. Nelson.
Jason J. Nelson.
Jason J. Nelson. Yeah. If they look up Jason Nelson, there'll be a million of us. That's why
I
like the J, because it's John, and it's a family name, Jon. It's Danish version, and my dad has that name. My brother has a name. My cousins. I like the J, but also it's easier to remember. But Jason J. Nelson. If you went on to Facebook and searched that, you can see my public page. You can see my township page. And then also, if you search Jason J. Nelson, the book will come up that we talked about that I wrote called "The Life of the Party."
Yes,
about Jesus. That'll come up, and
I wanted to talk about that. We got about 10 minutes left. Okay, so the life of the party. Jesus is the life of the party, and and when people think of parties, they're not thinking about inviting Jesus. They're hoping that he'll wait till Sunday and I'll talk to him about it. But I think that Jesus, the life of the party, is that's terrific title. So explain, why is he the life of the party?
Well, first of all, he was invited to parties.
The weddings and stuff.
So he turned water into wine, and not just any wine, the best wine that anybody had ever had at that time, and since probably, and not just some wine, but enough to fill like gallons and gallons and gallons of wine. I mean, and this is just Jesus. When God does something through Christ, it's not just giving; it's giving in abundance. And if we were to think back in our lives, just how much God has given us, it's just grace after grace after grace. And so he really was invited to parties, and wherever he went, people would gather by the hundreds, by the thousands, and whether they planned to have a party or not, it would turn out to be a celebration.
Sure.
Because he would enter a very hostile area, or he would enter a very heartbroken area or a context. He would enter a realm or a home of despair or anxiety or fear, and would flip it to make it an atmosphere of joy, hope, love, and life. And of course, he literally brought life wherever he went, and so when he was outside the tomb of Lazarus and he raised him from the dead, he was the life of the party.
Yes, he was.
When he raised the little girl from the dead, he became the life of the party. But his personality drew the attention of the masses because of who he is as God in flesh, as a member of the Trinity, along with God the Father and God the Holy Spirit, but also because of his message of love and forgiveness, and that the kingdom of heaven, through what he had to offer and what what he would give up in his life, would open the doors to anyone, regardless of stage or age or status or accolades or awards, because entering the kingdom of heaven had nothing to do with earning it. It had to do with being given it and receiving it in his name. So he was and is today the life of the party.
I think it was, I love the story at the wedding. And when his mom comes over and goes, hey, they're running out, could you just say, and he goes, woman, it's not my time yet.
My time is not yet come.
That's right.
That's what he said, yeah.
Yeah, so back off. But
what was her response? She kept pushing.
Yeah.
She was like thinking, yes, it has.
Yeah.
So she sort of forced.
She did.
Not forced, but kind of persuaded him to get on with it. Now it's time.
And it was perfect when she looked to the servants and say, do whatever he says. Just just whatever he says, do. And it'll happen. So I wonder if he'd ever done that in the household and she knew he could do this. And so, they were out of wine and Joseph didn't want to go to the store. And so he said, okay, all right, let me show you what I can do. And he did it. So it always intrigued me. Like, what did he know he could do, and what did he know? At what age did he know that little bird just fell down? He's dead. I can bring that bird back to life.
That's a good question.
I think that would be.
It's
Would
interesting.
be fun.
We do know that about age 12 or so, he was in the temple in Jerusalem,
right?
And he was lost. His parents didn't know where he was, which was weird to me, because how do you lose Jesus, right? That's not good. You're entrusted, Joseph and Mary, you're entrusted with the Son of God. Don't you think they would do as much as they could do not to lose Jesus? Can you imagine parenting him? Like, he'd fall down, get a scrape on his knee. She'd probably run over there like, oh no, what's God ever going to do to me? I just messed up. My son just
Mary,
got a scratch.
Just remember, go
but
back.
We do know that in the temple, when they finally came and they realized he was gone, that he said, I was in my Father's house.
Yeah,
So
but they
at that
reprimanded
age,
him like
which probably wasn't
they-
easy to do either.
no, probably
knowing who he
not.
was, like-
and not knowing what he was going to say in front of all the people, the elders, and everybody that was sitting there. And he goes, like, how's he going to respond to this? And he said, don't you know?
But it's interesting because he's fully human. He is, not was. He is fully human, and yet he's fully God. So it's a theological, concrete statement that developed around 325 AD, which is, in my mind, it means Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, not after death.
Yeah.
Or common era now. They have like CE instead of AD. They call it common era because they want to get rid of Christianity.
Of course.
But so we know that throughout the Gospels, obviously as God, he's all knowing. But yet there's times where he's almost self-limiting his human knowledge, which is why one time when a woman who had been bleeding for years touched him, he turned around and he said, "Who touched me?" So there's instances where it seems like from a human standpoint, there's still knowledge for him to be gained, at least at that moment in time. It's very fascinating. Studying Jesus is so fascinating.
It is. And so I think that, people need to know where you're pastoring, where you are at Tomball.
Rose Hill United Methodist Church in Tomball. It's a church that's been around for 147 years.
147
They were founded as a
years.
German congregation, Methodist. It wasn't United Methodist. That didn't happen until 1968. So you had basically a Methodist Episcopal church, north and south. Unfortunately, it had split, but it came back together. So it was a German congregation. So it's in Rose Hill, which is a sort of a subdivision. It's not corporated or incorporated. It's just sort of a in Tomball. So it's a great little community.
Yes, and Tomball's so fun to drive through. I mean, it's so quaint. And it reminds you of Old Town Spring in the sense of going through it. But and you're it's located where? It's located right.
Rose Hill Church Road. So it's off
Road
of
Hill.
2978.
Okay.
You go west from downtown Tomball, go past 249, go down about 4 or 5 miles, and then there's a Rose Hill Church Road that's down there. It's a beautiful 13 acre campus. We have the historic chapel that was built in 1875 and ended up burning down, so they rebuilt it like in 1881. So that's we have a service there every Sunday. Then we have another building they built in the 70s. We have a contemporary service in there. And then they have a fellowship building, and we have dinners and other events in there. Then they have a building across the street where the bigger service is.
Well, I'm so glad you're still real close to. I mean, that you didn't move outside of where you could stay and serve in the Woodlands, and Tiffany and Conroe. I'm excited to see what their group, the Mama Bears, do. I want to be at the first board meeting, the school board meeting, and see if anybody tries anything, to like, I disagree with this or that, and see how they handle it. Because that's what I asked them. I said, if somebody stands up and goes, okay, we're going to start reading from the porn book we found in the library, and would you let them, or would you go?
Well, in public comment, because of the Opens Meeting Act in Texas particularly, people generally get 3, if they sign up, it depends on who's running the show, the president of the board or the chair of the board, in our case in the township, you get 3 minutes of public comment. And the rules are we don't respond. We can't respond.
Right.
Actually, we're told we
Yeah,
can't
that's
respond.
what you said. We have
but
to be
there are
quiet.
some fine print rules about vulgarity that you're not allowed to have. And if there's a moment there where it's unsafe, I think verbally or emotionally, then I think that law enforcement will intervene. So in those cases, I wouldn't expect somebody to lose their mind. And in a way that would not be appropriate in that context without having someone step in.
Then you should use your Constitution the same way. You should, as like a Constitution, of your meetings, and these are the rules that you have, and you can't have this vulgarity, and you can't have this and there. Then why is it okay to be in the schools where it's kids? It's not adults. We're all adults here, and you're letting it in the school, and. One of them said, we're not going to ban books, and I understand you don't want to ban books, that kind of thing. But when something is extremely age inappropriate,
right,
and all that should be put behind the librarian's desk, and she has to call the parents to see if it's okay if they read this stuff.
Right.
I think it's really interesting where we are, that we don't know what's in there.
There should always be restrictions that parents are able to put on their children. I mean, you even on Netflix or on whatever service that you get from at home, bringing in TV. There's an opportunity as a parent to say, well, that's not age appropriate. I'm putting restrictions there.
Right.
Why wouldn't we do that in the public school? Why would we say the same thing that these people are trying to say when they're giving us content, that not everything is age appropriate.
Right.
Things are rated for a reason, not appropriate for children under 18.
That's
it says that on ratings. Now, our ratings have seemed like they've not been the same. Like 20 years ago, our rating was way different than it is today. It seems like it's gotten even more grotesque. But there definitely should be restrictions on what our children should see.
Well, I think that it's
not a free-for-all.
No, not at all. And I think that's what we're looking at is like scary, because if you have to have a permission slip from your parents to take an aspirin and all, then you need to be able to have them call if my child wants to become a boy, or that was a girl. And so I'm so glad that there's minds like yours that are sitting in seats of authority, in the sense that there's many things that you can change or reform or whatever, so that we can get back to some, math and reading and doing.
Get back to the basics.
Yeah, the basics, and that be it. Don't worry about the social stuff. Let them take care of that stuff. That's the way it was divided up in the beginning. So I'm glad that you're here, Jason Nelson, and I think it's going to be an interesting election night.
It is,
because you got you running and your wife running at the same time. So that's great, and I wish you all the best luck to you.
Thank you, and thanks for the invitation to be here.
Well, it was my pleasure, because I needed someone that would talk to me, and Richard and I had our show yesterday because the guy didn't show up. So we got to interact and converse about all kinds of different things. And Richard loves to stir up controversy, but it's okay. But we may have to do it tomorrow again, because I'm waiting for the girl that's supposed to be here, and she's supposed to be coming in from the Spirit of Halloween. Now, if you've ever been to the Spirit of Halloween, have you ever been to one of the stores that they have called Spirit of Halloween, and you go in and they scare you and your children to death, and they have all these pop-up things and stuff like that?
I don't think I have. Yeah.
Oh, you haven't? Okay. Yeah. It's amazing, and I wanted to get down to why they're here, how they got this way, but it's great. It's like the scariest place you can take the kids, and them come out and go like, I never want to go back there again. But it's really amazing. It's like something you go down if you didn't go to Disney World, that was the place to go. Anyway, listen, that's maybe happening tomorrow, but she hasn't called me back yet. So what do I do? And maybe it may be just Richard and I. And so anyway, first responders, we love you, and even more, God loves you, and we're just so happy for everybody today because it's a beautiful day outside. Get outside. It was 52 this morning. Oh my goodness, I love it. Fall is coming. So, it's just for a few hours, and then we'll get back to the heat. But thank you so much, and we'll see you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.